right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, dogs and cats, children, as well as babies, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to the Driveline Academy podcast, the world's most dangerous youth baseball podcast. I'm your host, Deven Morgan, Direct Youth Baseball at Driveline, founder of the Driveline Academy, and your marble-mouthed associate to guide us through this particular journey. As some of you who might be joining us on an audiovisual platform would note, I am not joined by my brother, my partner, my co-host, Driveline Academy Assistant Director, Driveline Academy International Man, Mr. Jeremy Techteal, because he is in Chicago finishing up celebration of Yon Thanksgiving weekend. So instead, you just get me this time. We're going to do this as FDR inspired, a little fireside chatty as we possibly can. But first, before we get into any of those things, we must dispense with housekeeping. Housekeeping, as per usual, axbat.com, code DL20 will get you 20% off at axbat.com. What can you use that for at axbat.com? What kind of things would you enjoy this 20% discount we are so happy to offer to you? Well, if you are a stick and ball sport enthusiast, axbat.com has the things that you want, whether it's game bats, whether it's training bats, whether it's training accessories. They got all the things at axbat.com, in addition to other things like their newly enveloped uniform creator. So if you're looking for a uniform solution for teams this coming year, we're not going to get any piece of that. You can't use the discount code on that. But for all the bat stuff, you definitely can at axbat.com. Code DL20 will get you 20% off. D as in Dominguez, L as in Learhouse. Dominguez Learhouse 20. Shout out to my old pastor. Dominguez Learhouse 20 will get you 20% off of axbat.com. Beyond that, the thing I need to tell you about are things like Driveline Academy Flex. Driveline Academy Flex is your ability to train to do the driveline stuff flexibly without leaving your current youth team or training program. What Flex is basically a monthly service where in that month you're going to come into a driveline facility, ideally, or you can assess remotely using technology. We are going to generate a report off of that assessment. We're going to talk about the things you need to work on. We're going to give you a plan for 6 weeks to work on those specific things. And then we're going to have you retest, right? And during those 2 retests, we want you to continue to submit data. You will submit video. You talk to our trainers, and you get an idea of just like, are you making progress on the stuff that you need in order to be better and perform better? It's really designed to just like open our doors up to kids who either aren't close enough to one of our facilities to be on one of our teams, or are close enough, but like, look, you've got a great community of kids that you're playing with and families you associate it with, but you're aware that you need to work on some stuff to develop skill. And no knock on your current team, but maybe that's not something that they have the tools to focus on. Maybe they're just getting you some field practices and playing games, and that's totally fine. We're here to help with the other side of stuff. So Driveline Academy Flex is exactly that for players 14 and under. It's your way to get started doing the driveline stuff, training with data, focus on the development of skills at scale without leaving your current team. It gets you up to 5 days a month in the gym. You're going to get monthly programming. You're going to get meetings with our trainers. You're going to take advantage of our biomech retests, or we can do the remote retests if you have that technology, which we make that cheaper for you to be able to get access to. With being a part of Driveline Academy Flex, it's just, again, flexibly designed to help you integrate the stuff that we're doing with your current team. If you're into that. The other thing we have, the Driveline Academy Snapshot, is like a 90-minute biomech snapshot where you're going to come in to one of the driveline facilities, and you're going to test your hitting in our mocap lab, you're going to test your throwing in our mocap lab, and we're going to get your athletic performance measured in our force plates. You can do that in Washington, in Arizona, and now in Florida. So we got snapshots rolling over the place. We got Driveline Academy Flex launching all over the place. We also have the Driveline Academy Power Hour. So Driveline Hitting Power Hour is a 60-minute hitting session. You get 2 of them for free just for signing up. And if you want to do more of them, if you feel compelled to give us money, that's a thing that we could do. Honestly, what I would rather you do is have you do something like Driveline Academy Flex, because then you can do the Power Hour hitting sessions that way at a cheaper rate. We like to be able to give things to our customers as affordably as possible. So that's what that is. So Driveline Academy Power Hour, again, it's a 60-minute hitting session that I like to say it's programmatic, meaning Each session kind of follows a program. We're going to come in and we're going to kind of get comfortable hitting middle heaters. We're going to introduce some challenge, right? So whether that's more velocity or more spin or some combination of both. And then in the end, we're going to finish with some competition. Each session is designed to basically have all three of those ingredients because as far as I can tell, that's what makes a great hitting session. So that's what Power Hour is. It's kind of, I guess for lack of a better term, it's the gateway into, checking out what we do on the youth side. And again, you sign up and you get 2 of those sessions for free. Because why not? What else do I have? I guess the only other thing I got is the Skills at Scale Complete Youth Baseball Training Manual, which I will pull off of my side here because I bookmarked a page. But it's this rascal right here, Skills at Scale, the Complete Youth Baseball Training Manual. It's 330 whatever pages of everything I can possibly give you about youth baseball development. It's got a lot of coaching intention stuff. It's got a lot of stuff about parenting and being positive through this lens of like helping to teach your kids not only to be able to perform in the game, but also to love the game, because you got to have both. And then it's very heavy on the skill development side, leveraging everything that we know and I've learned over the course of the last 14 some odd years of doing this in one capacity or another, about the true scientifically proven as far as we can mechanism by which you develop skill and your player helps to develop skill. And we want to develop that skill with a very specific eye towards what kids need, hence Skills at Scale. Beyond all that fluff, it comes with our yearly training plan. So we lay out basically a 12-month training cycle for you, and you can kind of just arbitrarily pick a start date and then hit the ground running on that plan. It's got all of our technical skill development plans. So whether that's velocity development, whether that is blending the season on the mound, whether that's bat speed development, whether that's developing bat to ball skills, all those programs are in there as well. It's got a gigantic long-term athletic development exercise game library with a ton of modifications. It's just got literally every piece of the pie that I can give you. Oh, I almost forgot. It's got a whole bunch of games you can play in practice, either with your player or integrate into a team practice. Game environments that you can use in training, either in a facility or on a field, that again, all revolve around this cultivation of skill and engagement, AKA how do we construct environments for kids where they love it so much and they have so much fun that like they don't have a choice but to get better. Well, I mean, I suppose they have a choice. Perhaps I'm being a little bit hyperbolic, but like that's the intention with the book. It took me a little more than a year to write and produce, and it took me, I guess, the preceding 13 or 14 years to learn all the stuff that I needed to feel confident that I could put something out there that would be a benefit to you guys. So currently the Skills to Scale book is on sale for cheaper than it's ever been since launch because of our Black Friday, Cyber Monday promotions. I'm sure we're going to continue to do more holiday promotions leading into the end of December, and then certainly as we come back around to the spring. Whenever people ask me questions, and if you're a longtime listener to this pod, about some specific skill development conversational topics, sometimes my answer is just like, you should probably just get the book if you want the most complete answer, because I've really tried to cover literally every single box that I could. I mean, shoot, there's a whole chapter in there about youth catching development. There's a chapter in there about recruiting help from other players. If you're coaching a team and you know that you need more help and you're not quite sure how to get that or how to instruct those parents who want to be helpful in a way that is in consideration with the stuff that you as the coach are pushing forward, I got chapters in that. It's just, in the words of Bun B from a classic Bun B album that you may not be familiar with, it's everything. It's everything I can give you. It's all in one place. It's Skills to Scale, the Complete Youth Baseball Training Manual. Okay, housekeeping fini. Are we done there? I think we're done there. So welcome back from the holidays. The Sudafed kid, the Flonase champ. I am here. I am still sick. I'm sure that you can probably hear it. Someday I think I will be healthy again, and I won't sound like this, and I won't feel like my ear is still plugged up for for eons. That's going to be great whenever I get to that particular promised land. But instead, in the time that we have now, I will suffer through, and hopefully I don't sound too terrible to you guys. So with Jeremy not being here today, we're going to do a couple things. I'm going to expand on some stuff that I was talking about on socials relative to kind of just, I don't want to say gimmicky. Let's not say gimmick. Let's say some highly specialized forms of training for youth players. We're going to dig into that. And then we're going to do a little fireside chat. I'm just going to read a little bit out of the book, Skills to Scale Complete Youth Baseball Training Manual. Mostly just because as we come into this holiday season, your boy gets a little bit misty-eyed and feels very thankful about the position that I have, about the life that I live, about the family that I have, about the company that I work at. And I want to express some of the stuff that I've written in the book that I think expresses that same thankfulness. And hopefully you'll find some value of it. You know, if I can bootleg my book a little bit and you get some benefit out of it and we create some content for the pod, then hopefully, man, that all works out for everybody. So let's get into specialized training. I've had some people ask me recently what my thoughts were about water bags. For anyone unfamiliar, and we've got enough listeners to the pod, thank you once again, that maybe some of you guys aren't familiar with what the water bags are. So what a water bag is, and there are a couple different vendors of them. It's exactly what it sounds. It's a bag full of water. And these bags are, the capsule for it is kind of formed in a way where you can put it on a kid and have them perform what we would call are generally referred to as like sport specific movements. So what we're talking about is really just like hitting or throwing. And you can perform these moves while you have a bag of water sloshing around on your back, on your hip, carried kind of close to your torso, etc. And the thought there is that the water has weight, right? So we're introducing a little bit of what we'd call external load. And we're doing it in a way where, because the water is going to move around dynamically, athletes have to kind of constantly try to stabilize that weight, right? And the thought, and again, this is kind of the thing that we get into in the thread. And I'm going to go ahead and just like jump to this idea, right? If there are any point in tools like water bags, it's predicated on the idea that adding dynamic load onto the athlete that they must stabilize while performing a sport-specific movement benefits the movement when that load isn't present. Let's make sure that makes sense, right? The thing that we're assuming, because we are strapping this load onto a player and then having them perform a sport-specific movement, is that by doing so, there's going to be benefits to the athlete's movement capacity even when the water bag isn't there, right? So conceptually, sure, like this all makes sense, right? This all makes sense. I think there's a lot of training principles there behind that idea that you could apply to a lot of stuff that we do, right? Specifically, these throwing plyos right above my head right here, right? We throw plyos, overload, underload balls, because we believe in the positive benefits of pattern adaptation through introducing a little bit of external load. We also equip athletes with some balls that are even lighter than a regular 5-ounce baseball. And we believe that there is some benefit to movement speed in terms of being able to promote the supra-maximal movement capacity, faster than normal, that's a good thing for kids to be able to learn how to do. So the impetus isn't really the issue here, right? In terms of training paradigms, I think it's fair to say that a lot of the core ideas behind the application of water bags are not dissimilar to some of the ideas we believe to hold true when it comes to overload, underload training on the hitting and the throwing side, right? But then it starts to get a wee bit tricky. Because I'll tell you, man, like the reason that I started going off about water bags is literally what my own son was asking me about water bags, because he saw a video on Instagram. It's an internet kid. He's a high schooler. What am I supposed to do, right? Pretend that we're Amish and like take his cell phone away? No disrespect to Amish. He asked me, he's like, hey, I saw Paul Skeens throwing a water bag around. Like, what's up with that? That guy's real good. And so we had to talk about it, right? The tricky thing about kind of drawing a direct link between my teenage son or your teenage player and a rookie of the year MLB professional, one of the best handful of dozen human beings on the planet or whatever his particular task, is that there's a little bit of like tomato potato thing between the mapping the athlete and the training tool to the result going on here, right? Do you understand what I mean? Tomato, potato, these two things are not the same. And a lot of this just has to do with like the core difference between youth athletes and older athletes. One of the biggest differences, and I feel like this is a little bit, if this feels a little bit reductive to say, it feels a little bit like on its face, but I think we got to kind of cover this because it makes the whole thing make sense. The difference between younger athletes and older athletes is physical development, right? And physical development is going to take two components. There's going to be, I think, what you would call just like time in terms of calendar, right? How much time does the athlete have to develop as measured in calendar age? And then what's the rate of physiological development in that calendar period of time? One of the things that I posted up in the thread when I wrote this on Twitter is, I mean, I don't know that this is going to play, right? But like, let's just try. Can we get close enough to see? Those two kids, those kids are both 12. And for anyone not on an audiovisual platform, what I'm showing you is one 12-year-old who looks to be, a whole lot of 4 foot whatever. And then another 12-year-old who's like, I don't know, 6 something. They just don't look like the same. They don't look like the same age, clearly, because the rate of physiological development, even during the exact same calendar period, is massively different. And that is a thing that we understand to be true even with adults, right? Like I literally saw this meme floating around on the old Instagram myself this weekend when I was taking like a day and a half off of literally doing no work and watching Yellowstone with my beautiful wife, which was wonderful. I saw this meme of like, it was Rick Ross, the rapper, not the entrepreneur from Florida days. But Rick Ross, the rapper, standing beside 3 different NBA players. And those guys are so big and so physically impressive. And like Ross is not a small person. I guess I can't say can you say people that are fat anymore? Is that a thing? Let's just say can I say that he's overweight? Ross is large. Rick Ross, the rapper, is a large human being. And standing next to these like NBA players, he looks like a Make-A-Wish child, right? He looked really, really small. The same thing here. The same exact thing here. You've got 2 12-year-olds that they literally couldn't look like they're any. It's hard to picture more physiological separation at the same amount of calendar age. Okay? So, if that's true, that the big differentiator between older athletes and younger athletes is physiological development, which can be measured in just time and then rate of physiological development. And I suppose I got to be technical about it and acknowledge that training age is going to be in the mix there somewhere, because training age, to a degree, can accelerate some of the rate of physical development. If that's all true, then think about the water bag. where you're adding load during a sport-specific movement, but then think about the athlete. Paul Skeens, training with a water bag, is a fully formed adult human being. He is an incredibly well-developed athlete, and I can make it make sense in my head that guy in that circumstance can benefit from some amount of like incredibly sport-specific development and sport-specific stimulus that he would get from using a water bag. That's not a 12-year-old. Okay? The 12-year-old, again, the big differentiator between him and Paul Skeens is like systemic athletic development, right? So the point that I tried to make on socials is like, imagine a 12-year-old who can't hold a hinge. Okay? If you've got a 12-year-old who can't hold a hinge, that inability to perform a very basic movement task is going to definitively color the way that they express movement in sport-specific tasks. Let me make that super simple. If a kid is not physically developed and doesn't have a lot of base athletic capacity just means like the ability to express, I don't know, power and speed through movement. If they lack that at a basic level, then do they need a lot of sport-specific training, or do they need general development that improves sport-specific performance? And here's the tricky part. You probably can't do it all. You probably don't have time to do it all. You probably don't have calories to focus on the development of general athletic preparation, to focus on the sport-specific application of that general athletic development, and then highly, highly, highly refine in a highly specified fashion the sport-specific movements. That's a tricky thing to check all of those boxes, because you can't do it all. And even if you could, you probably shouldn't, right? I think that there's a reasonable argument to be made that you could do all of those things if you're training, let's say, 5 to 7 days a week. Is that appropriate for 12-year-olds? Is that appropriate for 11-year-olds? Is that appropriate for 7-year-olds? No, and like probably no. Probably no. The studies are out there, again, that would suggest that type of hyper-specialized focus with pre-teenage kids doesn't result in outright performance later on. Ton of studies have substantiated that point, and I suppose that this is a thing that people want to discuss or maybe not argue with, or let's discuss or dissent. We're all charitable, right? If that's a thing that we want to have some amount of dissent about, like I'm down to have that conversation, and we can fire studies at each other, but consider why. Why is it that all the studies seem to be fairly universal that this like increased amount of early sports specialization isn't resulting in increased performance, not only in the current term, but also over a longer period of time? Why is that true? Think about it like this. Paul Skeens has an athletic capacity to solve a lot of athletic problems at like a decently good clip, because he's a good athlete at a base level. Again, fully formed human being, adult, tomato, potato. Your 12-year-old who only plays baseball and only focuses on baseball-specific movements doesn't have that same capacity, because by only focusing on baseball, they are giving their body stimulus to develop solutions to a very limited number of movement problems. This issue is further compounded by the fact that you could be successful as a youth baseball player being able to deploy a limited number of solutions to a limited number of problems. Let me try to get a little bit esoteric and a little bit more based in the real world, because I know that sometimes I just talk too much and I get a little bit woofty-woo on this stuff. It's the difference between throwing strikes and throwing strikes hard as a 12 or an 11 or a 10 or a 9. Anytime I say a 12-year-old, just presume that I'm talking about kids ages 9 through 12. Most 12 and under hitters aren't particularly good. Just straight up there. And they shouldn't have to be. Some of them are. But most aren't, because they're 12, because they're kids. So if that's true, then the movement solution, the sport-specific movement solution that your 12-year-old could get very good at is throwing strikes. If throwing strikes means harvesting velocity for command. 12-year-old hitters, again, when I say 12, let's presume we're talking 9 through 12 or even lower, those kids aren't good enough to make you pay for making that choice more often than not. Okay? So you could have your youth baseball career revolve around nothing but this kind of game theory optimal, this environmental specific approach to the game, where we are refining a movement solution, which is throwing strikes, and we aren't pairing that with an appropriate focus on throwing strikes at a competitive level of intent. So now you get 13, 14, 15. Not only did you never learn to move with intent, not only did you never gave your body the stimulus that it needs to be able to throw things hard, which means rotate fast and have some degree of accuracy, in so much as kids are capable of that. And then think about the resulting athlete, right? That resulting athlete was highly specific in a specific environment, but that environment isn't evergreen. It changes. If all you're doing is you're strapping a water bag onto your youth athlete and you aren't putting an adequate amount of time into general athletic development, and you don't have a schedule that allows you to put time and training economy into general athletic development, you are... I'm struggling to come up with the analogy. You're refining something that doesn't play, you know? I guess I was trying to come up with a different analogy than the one I used on Twitter. Sudafed kid over here, the Flonase champ. I'm just going to give you the analogy that I used on Twitter. The way to think about water bags is like teaching a young kid a curveball. Again, let's talk about 12 and under kids throwing curves, right? If they can't reasonably command a firm fastball in and around the zone, your priorities are backwards. You're refining the specific instead of developing the general. I saw this video the other day. Tyreek Hill was talking about how did he get to be so fast? And he was like, his dad had him on a very basic training program, basically revolved on a pretty simple concept. If you want to be fast, you got to try to be fast, right? And he has doing ace skips and sprints, and he had this whole progression that basically was just if you need to develop speed, you got to try to move fast. You got to cultivate speed. The human being is just this massively wonderful adaptation machine. It thrives on and responds to the stimulus that it's given and the adaptation demand that is asked. The path forward is really, really clear, right? We can talk about this in terms of numbers, in terms of just hey, by the time that you're 14, you probably need to throw the ball 70, 72 miles an hour. You just should. because you're going to be on a 90-foot baseball field. You're going to have a massive increase in the square footage on that field. And if you don't want to just get pigeonholed into playing second base, you need to be able to have the output level that gives you capacity to play other positions. Same thing on the hitting side. If you can't find the green on a line in a 90-foot field because you waterbagged it, right? You specialized a highly, highly specific skill instead of developing generalized athletics to substantiate the core function of the skill. You can't find the green, man. You can't find it on a line on a 90 field. And you got a really hard time, or you got a really hard path trying to find a way to be competitive. I should be able to, I guess, translate that into like a finite bat speed number. I guess I'd like to say somewhere between 60 and 65 with a BB core bat at 14. I think is a reasonable enough goal for just like base competitiveness. Just base competitiveness. So look, if you have infinite amounts of time and you have infinite training economy and you want to layer in a water bag because you're going to check all these other boxes about general athletic preparation, general rotational capacity in the sport of baseball, because like we just turn and go, that's our sport. If you're going to layer on water bag work with all that other stuff, then like fine, knock yourself out. But if your kid can't hold a hinge, you're strapping a water bag to their shoulders and asking them to pitch off the bump, what in the love of all that is good and holy are we doing? That ain't it. That's not it. We're missing the foundation of this thing. And again, man, I don't want to jump down anybody's throat and act like I have all the answers and I'm the only one that's right and everybody's wrong, because that's certainly not the case. But consider why. Why are we bringing incredibly specialized mechanisms of athletic development that are occasionally attached to products that you can buy to youth baseball? What about the value prop of our ecosystem environment and the configuration behavior of the teams and coaches and players within it is propagating that? Look, I did an ad read at the beginning of this show about the youth power bat and the youth underload smash bat. I get it. You know, we sell training tools too, but there's a difference, right? There's a difference. Power bat was designed in our lab, leveraging data from hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of youth game bats to give kids appropriate overload stimulus, which is not a thing that's universal. There are incredibly popular training bats out there in the youth market that are drastically, disproportionately overloaded in terms of swing weight beyond the capacity of these kids. That's just a fact. Those guys do great business. And I've looked at the MOI numbers, MOI being moment of inertia, aka swing weight. We bought them. Looked at them in the lab. Measure the MOIs. I bet you they're going to sell 100 of those things on Facebook today. And the kids aren't strong enough. Swing weight is too high. Kids go to swing. They dump the barrel early. Got to dig it out of the hole. So the attack angle on plane score, no matter which metric you choose, is all wonky. And then you got John Smoltz on the broadcast yelling about the launch angle swing. You got A-Rod on the broadcast yelling about the launch angle swing. Gee, I wonder why. These are specific outcomes that are more likely than not to happen with training equipment and implements that aren't appropriate for the athlete. So we don't do that. Youth Power Bat was specifically designed to leverage the data that we had to make sure we had appropriate overload training in a single bat solution. Youth Unload Smash Bat. It's really small, it's really light, and it's a really thin diameter barrel. It makes catching a barrel flush a challenge. That is a good thing. We increase task complexity based around a core concept. Move the bat fast, hit the ball flush. That's not a specialized skill. That's the base of the skill. The thing that professional hitters do better than basically anybody else in the world, they move the bat fast accurately. And more often than not, they're able to make good swing decisions or swing decisions where they do damage enough to keep a job in professional baseball. It's a core function. And I would offer that training generalized bat speed and the application of that in the discrete skill of moving the bat fast accurately, those are much more generalized skills than strapping a bunch of water to a kid's neck and then asking them to throw a bullpen. And even if the differentiation between these two things is debatable, and I suppose I'm willing to concede that maybe it is, the reason that like the training plan that you're going to find that you get with the Power Bat and Youth Unload Smash talks about things like strength development is because you have to do both. You have to do both. I can't control it. I can't force you to like, hey, make sure if you're going to do, 3 sets of 10 swings with the Power Bat, also make sure you do like 3 sets of 10 to 12 push-ups and 3 sets of 10 to 12 like air squats. Maybe, I don't know, hold a plank for 30 seconds. I don't know. I got PTSD about planks. I can't force you to do that, but I can tell you that you have to work on the development of the general, right? The skill and sport-specific movements that kids express are going to be a reflection of what they are systemically capable of as athletes. So if you look at this very specific thing and you find flaws in it and you don't reflect back on their general movement athletic capacity and see the link between those two things, you are never going to solve this problem. Introduce any number of previous rants that I have given you that I won't regurgitate this time about the lesson model. And this idea that, we can focus on the development of swing mechanics without addressing some of the systemic flaws therein. And one of those systemic flaws could be that you need overload weight stimulus to train you to move your game bat better. Again, I'm not trying to act like we have all the answers, but, we do try to get pretty convicted about the quality of the training products that we come up with before we even sell them to you guys. We use them here, or we use them on a field, or some combination therein. So anyways, that's my thoughts about water bags. I'm not saying that you can't find some amount of benefit. I'm open to, some positive stories about development with kids using water bags. If you want to pipe in and let me know, maybe I'm 100% wrong here. Like I'm open to that. But the core contention that I'm going to have is just like, if we are over-indexing trying to solve a very, very specific problem, and we aren't looking to solve the general problem that's at the foundation of all this stuff, that's exactly why all these studies conclude that like early sport specialization is not helping the athletes in terms of performance. Because we are, to a degree, forcing them to solve the same problem over and over and over and over. And if that same problem doesn't require generalized athletics and requires very, very specific things, like just blocking and rotating, right? We block and rotate a lot in this sport. There's a lot of other athletic movement capacity that gets neglected if all you do is block and rotate. We have to have a foundation of both. We have to have a foundation of athletic development. We need to supplement that appropriately with specialized skills. Your mileage may vary about water bags, but for me, I'm not looking to go down that path for the time being relative to the age of my athlete. Now, look, if we get a couple years down the road and kid still wants to play baseball, kid still loves baseball, I don't know. Maybe we'll look into it. Maybe we'll look into it. I still have some. I still have some base like training economy questions. This is part of the reason why you're never going to see. Well, maybe not never, but you haven't seen anybody at Driveline training with a bunch of like bungee cords strapped on them, right? Because the presumption is you if that's a thing that you're going to do, you have to presume that there's going to be benefit to the movement when you take that stuff off. Right? That's what that whole concept is predicated on, and I think that also holds true for the water bag, right? And this is part of the thing too. Even if that's true, if I'm going to spend, let's say, 20 to 30 minutes with an athlete, and I'm going to have them do reps, sport-specific reps with a water bag, is that really going to be better than having that kid do a squat or an RDL or a Palloff press with load? I don't know, man. I don't know. I think good compound movements in exercise are training your capacity to do the same thing, right? To increase movement quality and quantity of force output. I think you might be training that a little bit more specifically when you're doing good compound lifting plans, or even again the long-term athletic development stuff. In our manual, man. It's going to teach you to hinge. It's going to teach you to sprint. It's going to teach you to change direction. It's going to teach you to produce force. It's going to teach you to land. It's going to teach you to jump. You have to do all that stuff. And if you can't do all that stuff pretty well, strapping a water bag on your kid's back is probably the last thing that they need. We're getting highly, highly specific and highly technical without addressing the general. It's teaching a kid that can't throw the ball hard and in around the zone a good gravity ball curveball. I mean, if it's a gravity ball curveball, it's not actually good. But again, this is a whole other tangent. I feel like we're getting into horse glue territory for anybody that's a longtime listener. Thank you guys for staying with us. I appreciate you. We're getting into horse glue territory. So again, that's what I got on water bags. If you differ, if you want to talk about this stuff, man, I'm into it. But I'm just going to have a hard time accepting that that's a thing that we really should be prioritizing if we haven't mastered the general stuff first. So anyways, water bags. We good? We're good. So I wanted to just end. I was going to read a little bit of a last chapter in the book. I'm just going to bootleg my own book on audio because why not? It's the holidays. I want to give you guys something. So the last chapter in the book is called Why I Coach. It's chapter 14. And you turn to that chapter, you're going to see two things. You're going to see a picture of me and the boy from a couple years ago at a tournament that we were at. I had the good fortune of being able to assistant coach that day, and I don't know, man. I'm however many removed from coaching either one of my kids. I was cleaning out the dresser in our bedroom yesterday, and found a bunch of like old birthday cards and stuff that the kids had written me over the years that I had thrown in there and kept. And what a wonderful time. What a joy. What a privilege it has been to be able to coach my kids and have that amount of time that I spent with them. It's like you only get to do it once, and I can say with conviction that I did my absolute damnedest to soak up as much of that time as I possibly could. And there is a part of me that is always going to think back about my early coaching and have a fairly like profound amount of embarrassment about how I coached when I started. And I have to thank my children for giving me grace to work through that stuff and get better. I wish I could have done it perfectly the whole time, and I didn't, but it taught me a lot. It really taught me a lot. And what it taught me goes into this chapter. So let's get into it. I'm going to come back to the quote that starts the chapter later. All right. FDR, let's go. Why I coach. I don't remember the last competitive at-bat of my life, but I do remember the last one that I cared about. I was a younger kid playing on a team of guys who were a couple years older than I was and were already in high school. The coach of this team was a grumpy old guy whose son also happened to be our starting catcher. I came up as a catcher, but it quickly became apparent that I wasn't going to get any playing time at that position in the near term. So I got converted to getting occasional playing time at second base or in right field. I'll be honest about the fact that I do recall 90-foot baseball being a big adjustment at first. It seemed like the game moved a lot quicker, and there was a lot more nuance to it in the transition from 60-foot to 90-foot bases. It initially felt like there was a near endless list of things that I was constantly getting wrong. The impression that I got from our head coach when I made these types of mistakes was as if the answers to the test were handed out already, but I was that kid who left their crib sheet at home. In contrast, to me it felt like I had studied for a test in Spanish, then walked into the classroom, and much to my surprise, it turned out the test was actually in Latin. The social environment on the team wasn't great either. There were a couple of other kids my age on the team, and I recall us seemingly off on our own little island. Myself, maybe more so because of the initial positional issue, which only got worse when I started taking playing time at second base away from an older player. There were more than a couple of times that I found myself not having anyone to play catch with to warm up, other than the other catcher, who couldn't buy any playing time at that position either. In total, there were a number of other small but similar incidents that I've either forgotten or packed away in the decades since. In either case, the feeling of dejection that came from all of those moments is still clear. The only respite I had from this recurrently negative environment was when I was hitting. In the field, in new positions that I didn't have a ton of experience with, I was in a near constant state of unease. In the batter's box, though, that was home, and I was more than comfortable there. I was actually happy. I specifically recall a game where we were playing that season against a team from out of town. Slightly past the middle point of the game, after their starting pitcher had absolutely carved us through 5 or so innings and no-hit ball, our dugout was exactly what you don't want. Silent and preemptively beaten. I got put into the game, and in my first and only at-bat of the day, lined a ball into the gap and found myself standing on second base. I felt, well, I can't put into words exactly how it felt, other than that in that moment, compared to the majority of the season, I felt like I belonged. That feeling didn't last long. Later in that same season, we played an away game at a park that, funny enough, is very close to where my family and I currently live. I was at the plate, and in the incoming pitch came in hard and directly at my head. I quickly ducked to get myself out of the way, but what I didn't do was bring the bat with me. Predictably, the ball found the bat, and all of a sudden I went from plus count to wearing 2 strikes, albeit one of them very unintentionally. As soon as this happened, I started hearing it from the coach, notably while the at-bat was still going on. I actually got on base. I honestly don't recall at this point if I worked a walk or got a hit, but whatever the inning did end, the coach immediately continued to wear me out about my accidental foul ball. And at a certain point during this interaction, the teenage version of my rational brain engaged, and I can remember very clearly being struck by how impossibly inappropriate the whole exchange seemed. In that moment, a switch flipped, and I was no longer interested in tolerating this experience from this coach any further. There were more games that I played for that coach and team, but all of them have since faded into the same dull gray haze that comes from detachment. When I decided I was done with baseball, I thought at that time that it was because I was done with that coach. As far as I was aware, there weren't any other baseball teams to play for other than the one I had decided to reject. So there were effectively no other options. And just like that, my life in baseball was done, or so I thought. What do I think now as a middle-aged man about why I didn't find a way to continue to play? I think I didn't want it bad enough, and I likely wasn't tough enough. Maybe I just needed to stick with it and prove to the coach, the team, and myself that I did belong. Regardless, the funny thing is that when I look back at that coach and my experience with him, my perspective on the experience has dramatically changed. That guy, who at one point in my life I had absolutely demonized, ended up coaching for 25 years in total, won a Lifetime Coaching Achievement Award, and after his passing, got a scholarship named after him at my high school. His son, the one I thought I was fighting with for playing time, seemed perfectly happy and well-adjusted, and deservedly celebrates the untold positive impact his father had on hundreds of kids. For a time, I would have never considered myself one of those kids, but now that I coach, I actually do. Whether that coach's style or approach was a good fit for me as a kid playing ball in the early 90s is completely immaterial at this point. What I now know is that all of my experience in baseball, including the ones that compelled me to stop playing, were in truth the best gifts that I could have possibly hoped to receive, because they made me passionate about being a better coach. When I started coaching, I thought that it was like putting together a puzzle, and if I could just find and put together all the right pieces, the tech, the tools, the drills, I could assemble this proverbial puzzle picture correctly. Now, more than a decade in, I think the act of coaching is more like making a meal. All of these things, from tech to tools to drills, are simply new ingredients for you to use, and their only true purpose is realized when you effectively blend and use them together, not for your own enjoyment, but in the service of your players. I won't be shy about the fact that I hope this book challenges the way that you think about coaching youth baseball. I also have to be honest about what I see on youth baseball fields every weekend and the experience that we're putting these kids through. It's not even so much about the instruction as it is the overall environment, which is so commonly toxic that when I see coaches who don't behave that way, it significantly stands out. What makes it worse is the way that youth baseball doesn't need to be this way, but it will continue to be until we, as coaches and parents, collectively decide to change. Baseball is truly a beautiful game. I love it deeply because what I've received from it. I only want more kids to experience it long enough so that they get the same benefit. That is why I coach, and that's why I've written this book. You know what? I was only going to do one part. We're going to do the second part. Are we hanging in? We're hanging in. Okay. The subsection is called The Balance of Art and Precision. Hopefully the message and this approach we advocate for resonates, as it distills the fundamental concepts of what we believe to be ideal for youth baseball development, which reflects what I've learned coaching my own kids and a whole bunch of other kids over the course of these last 12 years in both recreational and select baseball. It's 14 now, but whatever. I certainly hope that, armed with the information in this book, you will be able to successfully implement our approach to skill development and engagement in youth baseball with either your own player or teams. While this approach is very different from what is currently conventional, I sincerely hope the definition of convention changes over time. Yes, I want to change youth baseball, but more importantly, I want to change the way that we deal with the customer in youth baseball, children. While it's true that the Skills to Scale framework focuses training time on the most impactful attributes of competitive players and sets players up for success on the big field, the true objective of our approach is to change the way that parents and coaches connect with their children through baseball, to make the entire endeavor more positive. If you're reading this book, it's highly likely you're a parent, either of a single player who wants to improve their baseball skills, or one who's coaching a whole team, including your own child. Because of this unique configuration of close proximity between parents and their children, the more that we associate failure in the game with danger, the more things get out of hand in how we, parents, react. This plays out on fields almost every weekend, where it's very possible, and unfortunately likely, that you'll see either a coach or an adult in the stands step out of line. Instead of being rare, these overly competitive outbursts from parents seem to turn into normative behavior that is unfortunately expected by the players. And I'm terrified of what that means for the long-term future of our game. So, with the Skills to Scale concept, I want to help you understand about how to develop your players' skills. I also want to change the way that you think about your players. I want you to stop expecting kids to be small adults. I want you to stop thinking about players in terms of the risk that they present to your chances of winning a game. Instead, I want you to think more about the biological reality of young children and less about what a strikeout, a walked batter, or an error in the field says about your effectiveness as a coach. I also want you to think a lot about whether your player will even be interested in playing baseball next year, and whether your training and conduct as their coach is either inspiring or smothering that feeling. I believe this approach to penalizing failure is often rooted in the idea that success in baseball is predicated on precision. As if, much like a good marching band, an abundance of rote practice will drill players' specific skills and techniques to the point of perfection. That is not to say that perfection isn't ever the intention, or it isn't ever achieved, because it certainly is. But precision alone isn't everything. It simply can't be, because of the chaos inherent to competition, especially at this level. Where some coaches see a need for precision, I see a need for art. With the amount of variability youth baseball players have to deal with, both in terms of their own biology, rest, recovery, and nutrition, and in terms of competition variables like game situation, count, pitch velocity, location, and spin, I believe that the best path for success isn't based on a single perfect solution for a single situation, but a million solutions for a million situations. That's creativity. Think about athletic creativity as art, not one painting produced at every stage of a child's life, rather a singular composite image that's developed, refined, and clarified over years and possibly decades. With this perspective, the objective of youth baseball should be simple: keep the artist painting for as long as possible. If the clearest version of each athlete's painting will only be expressed if they have the time to acquire the technique to paint it, then the opposite is true as well. A painting abandoned isn't just finished. A painting abandoned isn't finished. It's just neglected and then ultimately forgotten. We don't want to cast harsh judgments while the artist's techniques, styles, and color palettes are still developing. We just want to give them space to improve at their own pace and watch the picture they're painting emerge over time. Some of these paintings will hang in the Louvre. Others will be hung in a living room. Both can be cherished equally by the people who love the artist and know exactly what the journey of creating their art entailed. Thanks for rolling with me, doing the FDR thing. I'm sure you're going to hear a lot of this from me over the course of the next week or so of the pod. We're closing in on 200,000 listens. We're doing good numbers on social. Again, I'm highly, highly thankful for the position that I'm in and for the life that I have and the family that I have and the partner and wife that I have and the kids that I have and the co-workers that I have, me and Jeremy. And I love that dude. And I've told him to his face. I'll tell it to, I guess I'm actually in his chair, but I'll tell it to the empty chair. We got a really good crew here, and it's a real privilege to be able to do this work. It's a real privilege to be able to do this show for you guys, and hopefully you be able to find some type of value to what we do, and hopefully this stuff is interesting and it helps you think positively about, the stuff that you're working on for your own teams, for your own kids. I've been there and I've gone through it, and starting to move into the other phase of things, high school baseball, and looking at what college stuff looks like, and trying to make those choices is still challenging. It's still challenging. It's just challenging in a different way. And I will be honest with you that one of the big challenges is my wife and I trying to do a good job of empowering our kids to make the decisions that they need to make about how things move forward. And I'm sure that there's different ways to do this stuff, but what we, I think, are trying to do is just acknowledge the fact that, the kids need to, they need to bear and hold the responsibility for their choices, which means we need to expose them to opportunities where they have a choice to make. And that's not necessarily what it was when they were 10, 11, 12, 9, 7, yada, yada, man. So much of that early parenting is just, you're doing everything you can to keep them safe, but you're driving the bus a lot. You're driving the bus a lot. And I see now that we got to hand the keys over, literally and figuratively. I mean, literally because I got to start paying for car insurance or 2 kids in the next 6 months, so that's going to be fun. But also, figuratively in the sense that they need to make the decisions for themselves about how stuff goes, and they need to deal with the outcomes of those decisions. And if I don't think if we don't expose them to those opportunities now, then I think it's just going to be a net. It's going to be a net loss later. And what that means in the current term is that sometimes I let my kids make the wrong decision. I mean, I don't know. Maybe wrong is not the right thing to say. Maybe that's too pejorative. But make a decision that doesn't fit in this like perfectly ideal world of skill development, right? That doesn't necessarily always just like mesh perfectly with the constraints of teenage life, and that's okay. That's okay. You got to still try to put down bricks every day, and more days than not, build that foundation that again that substantiates the goal of where you're trying to get, and that goal is relative. Like I mean. I don't know. I was buying stuff for my kids for the holidays, and fortunately, they don't listen to the show. So I bought these two. This guy Brad Davis does like hand drawn art in really, really, really cool style of baseball guys, and he did this series of dudes. And there's like one with Griffey, and there's one with Sandy Koufax, and there's one with Mookie Betts, and I think I landed on in each one of them in the series that he has. It's like Brad Davis art. You can check it out. The series that he had is the Griffey one says something like the quote is something to the effect of, "As long as I'm having fun, the stats will take care of themselves." And I got that one for my son because that's a message that I know that he needs to hear. And in so much as, like we talked about, Jeremy and I talked about last week, is like, this the inception thing of like incepting the idea. I'm more than happy to spend, $30 and have my son have some art that goes up in his room that very subtly suggests that idea. You got to have fun in this game, man. You got to have fun in this game. And that you can't put the performance and the outcome ahead of the base. And the base has to say fun and love. If you listen to this show for any length of time, hopefully you've heard us push that message over and over and over. And I got my daughter the Mookie Betts one. And the Mookie Betts one is something to the effect of about how like winning is in his DNA. And I got that for my daughter because she's going into wrestling season. Mookie's her favorite guy on the Dodgers currently, and I think that's a good message for her to have in her sport. But you can bet your behind that when I give that to her, I am going to be offering a caveat that defines what winning means. Because she needs that definition as a wrestler as much as my son needs that definition as a baseball player. And like, you know what? We're only we're at an hour 7 here, right? I got one more tangent to go on. I thought I was gonna have a short thing, but like, I got one more tangent to go on. Winning is not a dirty word. Winning isn't a bad thing. Nobody is suggesting that you shouldn't try to win, okay? But here's the deal. The mechanism by which we pursue those wins and the way that we define winning and what that actually means is real, like, up to the end user. And the only pushback that I have here, and the comment that I'm searching for had to do with, well, come on. I got it somewhere. I made a point, Lee Taft. Okay, so Lee Taft is somebody you should follow on Twitter. He is heavy in the development space. Guy's been doing it for like 35 years. A lot of stuff on the basketball side. Lee's the man. So Lee posted this thing, and it goes, our youth coaching culture is about winning. Travel sports have accelerated this terrible trend. This, all caps, this alone causes fear in young learners from having freedom to fail their way to success. If winning fourth grade games is a priority, we deny opportunities for experimentation and development. I agree. I mean, big shocker, right? I couldn't agree any more strongly. So I reposted it, and I put like the Spider-Man grimace face meme, and I was just like plastic trophy vendors, okay? And somebody responded and goes, wanting to win is human nature. Even if there is no ring or trophy, everybody still wants to win in the moment. If we want to make youth sports better, we need to admit that. A good place to start would be teaching coaches how to talk to their players and parents about the variety of ways that winning can look. The industry really needs to lose the belittling, so you want a plastic trophy, $3 ring discourse. All right, man. Let's get into it. You can't offer both of those things. The 2 points that were being offered here by this person are oil and water. You can't substantiate the idea that, like, yes, we do need to spend some amount of time teaching coaches to provide some color about coloring outside the lines for what winning can look like. Just what I was talking about the caveat that I'm going to give to my daughter when I give her that a present for the holidays. You can't substantiate that point and then also go like, hey, well, you can't belittle the plastic trophy vendors. It's the same GD thing. Doesn't work. We need to give space for learning through failure. We need to give space for development. But the more that the ecosystem revolves around performance and winning, the less tolerance that we have for those two things. Those two environments can't coexist. They can't. You need modified environments where, yes, we want players to pursue winning. And in those modified environments, if they work, they provide value to all the participants, regardless of whether they checked that box, right? And again, for the nth time, this is why we believe in the positive power of training with data. Because if a kid takes a 50-mile-an-hour swing and a kid takes a 52-mile-an-hour swing, that kid won. If they're doing that in a group and a player had a 60-mile-an-hour swing, well, that kid didn't win, right? Because they didn't swing 61, but they won for them, right? But that's not what we're doing. That's not the plastic trophy environment. The plastic trophy environment recognizes one of those kids get a plastic trophy, and that's the 60-mile-an-hour kid. So the kid that went from 50 to 52, that's not a win. That's not a win. And if that kid that swung 60 went from 59 to 60, but this other kid went from 50 to 52, I would argue that, like, relatively, the player with the lower bat speed is winning more because they improve their performance by a greater degree and a greater percentage. But the plastic trophy environment doesn't recognize that. It is, not only is it ambivalent, but it is ignorant of the value of that thing. So yes, do we need to have better conversations at scale that teach coaches how to provide color about what winning really means? Yes. Look, I would love to see, like, Game Changer do something where it provides like an after action report, right? And it goes, hey, last game, your team had 2 hard hit balls. This game, you had 4. 2 thumbs up. Positive progress. That's a win. I'd love it if it did that, but it doesn't, so it's contingent upon coaches. But that environment, right, that's context. The box score, which then moves directly to win-loss, that's outcome. You are going to have a bunch of confused kids if you tell them that both of those things are equally valuable. Now, the context path, if we provide context for all of them, then it is reasonable to presume that all of them are going to be contextually enabled and incentivized to continue to play. The outcome path, there's one group that's incentivized to continue to play. There's one group that receives signal that their effort had value. I don't know how you make both of these things exist simultaneously. And even if I could make it make sense to my head as an adult, I think if you supply that environment to kids, you're just going to have a bunch of confused kids. Who do I listen to? Who do I trust? No one is saying that winning isn't important. I don't want to raise a bunch of kids who are taught by coaches who leverage a concept in this book that winning is not important. I have zero intention of raising a generation of youth baseball players who are ambivalent about winning. What I want is a bunch of kids from 14 on down that have been provided so much context and so much engagement and so much incentivization that we can get them to a 90-foot baseball field and we can say, look, you either won or you either win or you lose. And I got one of those outcomes I'm trying to push for at the 90-foot level. I'm fine with that. Do I think that the 90-foot level at 14 through 18 deserves just as much context as it does 13, 14 on down? Yes, absolutely. Hi, my name is Deven. I'm the Director of Youth Baseball at Driveline. This shouldn't be a surprise. But if you want to turn 90-foot baseball into we either win or we go home or whatever very stark binary attachment to winning you want to have, fine, I'm down. But at the 14 and down level, you can't have both of these things exist at the same time and expect the kids are going to understand it. We have to be able to flip the switch. We have to be able to assume and know that there is an appropriate period of time for us to be providing context and incentivization and engagement to every single flippin' kid that puts on a hat and a pair of cleats. All of them. We have to understand there's a period of time for that, and we have to understand that there's another period of time where, like, hey, now let's win. And all I am trying to tell you, all that this book is trying to tell you, is that we want the most competitive kids over here in 90-foot baseball land, where winning is the thing that matters. If we want the best kids here, we have to get this crop of kids bigger. We need more players. Because right now, we've taken this outcome-based perspective and we are slapping it down here. And what is happening, and what is going to happen, is less and less of these kids are going to continue to play the game because of the signal that they've received down here. This is cutting off your nose to spite your flippin' face. It doesn't have to be that way. Again, show me a study, show me one flippin' study that proves that this hyper-specialization, hyper-competitive environment for 14 and under kids is actually leading to us having more talent at the 15 and up level. Show me one. Show me one. Show me one in any sport. Because I've done the research. I've looked at the Olympic studies in the massive funnel of players you need up here to have like one Olympian down here. The evidence is out there, and yet we run the 14 and under level like idiots, mostly. and a disproportionate percentage of our behavior down here is expressly designed to not land us more athletes that want to be killers at 90 feet. Witnessing the death of our game in real time because parents can't get their crap together. Whew. Boy, I started this one on a low note, but I guess we're ending on a high one. My bad, guys. Yeah, sorry, man. I winning is very important. It is our responsibility as adults, as parents, and as coaches to be able to show these kids, an overwhelming majority of them at the 14 and under level, that they're all winning in one capacity or another. Then we can land on a 90-foot, and then let's go raise a generation of flipping killers. But we can't let this perspective continue to leak its way down here. It's not even a leak. It's a full-blown oil spill down here already. We have to reverse course. Enter some of the work we're working on with ABCA Youth Baseball committees and what we're doing with the Youth Baseball Summit. We're working on it. I'm not just a guy that gets angry on a podcast and performatively expresses my emotions for you guys. I promise that there is work going on behind the scenes trying to solve this stuff. We're going to keep grinding. That's all I got. Next week, I'm sure that Jeremy and I will be back. We definitely won't be talking about water bags. We will be talking about more like the holiday sale stuff that we have going on. Hopefully you've taken advantage of the Black Friday, Cyber Monday stuff. If not, look for other stuff coming on in the spring. Axpat.com, code DL20. I can't even remember. What did I do? Dominguez. Dominguez, I don't know, DL20 at axpat.com will get you 20% off your stick and ball sport and studio stuff. Driveline Academy Flex is your way to flexibly integrate Driveline Academy's training with your current youth baseball team. 5 days a month in the gym if you're close enough to get that. You can also do it entirely remote as well. You get to choose your own adventure there. Driveline Academy snapshots, 90 minutes to come in to get more metrics, more data, and more insight into how your player is performing right now than you ever would otherwise. Youth baseball, we got training stuff on sale. The skill book is on sale. We got all the stuff. We got all the stuff. And if you don't want to spend a single dollar, we got things like the free youth development program and the free team development program. Those free PDFs are available at drivelinebaseball.com. They're like 40 pages long. They're relatively in-depth. We got this. We got the pod. Thank you guys. You can find us on the socials at Driveline Youth. Follow us and do the likes and all that stuff on YouTube and on Spotify. It really, 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 really helps the algorithm to continue to press this stuff out. So if you enjoy this episode, our little fireside chat, you enjoy the other stuff of Jeremy and I just going back and forth. If you enjoy any of that stuff, if you hit it with that like and subscribe on whatever platform that you're listening to, it would be greatly appreciated. What else do I got? I think that's about it. Go listen to the Kendrick Lamar album. It's pretty good. Dodger Blue is a great song. My name is Deven. I'm down by law. I'll catch you next time. Thanks. Bye.